Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Trading Lifestyle Podcast. My name is Hugh Kimura, and in this episode, I have the pleasure of interviewing my friend Adam Hartley. Adam used to be a fund manager, and he is currently a trading programmer, and he has helped some of the largest institutions in the world create automated trading programs. However, through a small crisis that he had in his life, he realized that he has a gift for helping traders overcome emotional issues. And if you don't know, emotional issues can impact your trading more than you think. So resolving those things obviously is a big benefit to improving your trading skills. So check out this interview. We get into some pretty deep topics. Also stay tuned for another podcast that I'm going to be creating that gets way deeper into these topics. And this is stuff that I've been studying for the past 5 years or so. So I'm finally ready to start talking about it publicly. And Adam is going to be my first guest who I'm going to talk about it with. But this podcast is more surface level, more trading related, and will help you understand some of the mechanics that can go on behind trading psychology that you don't hear about on other podcasts or on blog posts. All right, here's the interview. Hi, Adam. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Hugh. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about your experience in trading psychology therapy, which I think is really interesting. But let's first start off with how you got started. What have you done in trading so people have a little bit of background on you?
Sure. Well, I mean, I've actually been in the business for quite a long time. I've started back in '94. Actually, I got interested in trading while I was doing part of my PhD. On the side, I thought, well, maybe it's an easy way of making money. I was very naive at the time, and then because I was a programmer, I started applying my programming skills to trading, and I ended up building a business doing that, acting as a freelancer for traders, and I worked ever since doing this in one capacity or another. So ranging from just freelancing for retail traders all the way up to working for some of the big banks. I spent 10 years as a fund manager, where we're managing up to nearly $900 million. And so it's been a real mix of things. But throughout this entire period, I've always been interested in trading and the whole process and trying to make money from the markets. It's such a fascinating and tantalizing thing that it keeps drawing me back. And I think like many people, you go down various avenues, various wormholes. You think, oh, I'll just try this system. This is bound to work. Or how about this one? And you keep jumping from system to system, and you never quite get there. So I could just about get above break even, but it would never really get proper traction. And then as like you and probably like most of the listeners for this podcast, I started to realize it was all about what's going on in here in the mind, you see. And so I started to realize that quite some time ago. And then it was probably 7 or 8 years ago, I went through a difficult patch when my business started to dry up, and I got very stressed about it, very anxious about it, started to get insomnia. So it's almost like a mini breakdown. This sort of thing happened. And as part of my, if you go to the doctor and with all that, they'll just give you pills. It's just completely useless. It's masking the problem. And I knew I needed to sort it out myself. And so as I started to explore how I could sort myself out, how I could, cure myself from all this anxiety and insomnia. And that opened the door to a whole new world for me, a whole new career. I started to learn various therapeutic techniques. I mean, I've been a hypnotherapist back in the day, so I'd done that on the side. So it wasn't like I was completely new to therapy, but this opened the door to a whole bunch of new things. And, I started to work on myself using the various tools we'll probably talk about in a little while. And that I got really good results. I started, I found, hey, I can actually sort out issues I've had all my life. I've been carrying around with me all my life. These can be sorted out and things. And so then you'd actually start to think, well, how far can you push this? What will happen if you actually keep on sorting out all your issues and things like that? So you really can go quite deep into this. But as part of that, I also started to realize, hey, hang on a moment. My trading that I've been struggling with, all these years, It's all about psychology. I know that much. Now I've got the tools, you see, so that I then put two and two together and thought, how can I make this work? And so from this gradually evolved what I call trading therapy almost. So it's basically using trading as a template to discover what my limiting beliefs are about trading or what my issues are. Because the thing about trading, there's nothing quite like it for pushing your buttons about so many things, whether it's money, it's success, fear of losing money, greed about wanting to have more money, feeling good enough, not feeling, I mean, all these things, it will push every one of those buttons, you know, and it's quite unique in that respect, in that it's I don't know how to put this. The thing about it is that it's so generalized. The only rule is you choose when you buy and when you sell. And apart from that, you can come up with whatever rule you want about how often you trade, what time frame, what manner, and things like that. So it's all built in your mind as this sort of framework or how I do this. And every aspect of that framework that you build up is an opportunity for your subconscious to get in the way and sabotage.
Yeah.
So you know, it's really, there's nothing quite like it, you know. And so when I realized this, I started this process of, say, as I call trading therapy. And it's a, basically you watch as you trade and you notice at the point when you're making decisions, when you're either taking that trade or not taking that trade, what is influencing me? How do I feel when I push this button or don't push that button? You know, am I feeling relaxed and calm and detached, or am I feeling stressed and anxious? You know, and every time I feel something that shouldn't be there, then I pounce on it and say, "Oh, what's that? Where's that come from?" And then I use my tools to try and work out where that originally comes from, trace it back to the original, you know, trauma or whatever it was. Find out what the limiting beliefs are, like I don't deserve to have money, or I'm not good enough, whatever it happens to be, and you know, and then untangle all that. And I found this works so well and improved my trading so dramatically that I thought I actually wanted to start offering this to other people. So I've been working as a therapist as part of, you know, on the side for a little while, and I've wanted to offer my trading psychology thing. So I've started doing that, and I'm getting really good results and things like that. And so I'm wanting to sort of spread the word. That there is a way out of all this. All these people have been struggling for years about trading. There's a solution, but it's not finding the ultimate holy grail. It's all about how you think, and you know, it's about doing the inner work.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. And I've done a lot of work too. And yeah, it probably is a never-ending thing, right? Of self-improvement. But I think one thing to kind of key on that I was talking about with another guy was that people who come to trading are generally very successful in other areas. So, you know, they probably don't have an issue with money, or the issue that they have is way deeper than just a kind of a surface level thing, right? So, like you said, it's going to push a lot of buttons, and a lot of people who are used to being successful in their job or as a CEO or whatever, they come to trading and they have some problems. So I think that it's very important to highlight that these issues come from things that are much, much deeper than you might realize. And, you know, it could be your childhood, whatever, you know, job loss, divorce, whatever it is. But that's very important to realize that those things are affecting your trading. And if you fix those things, they can have a huge impact on your performance and, you know, your mindset and everything.
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right when you say that a lot of successful people come to trading and then they wonder why they can't make it work, because they're used to coming to a problem and saying, you know, I know how to solve this kind of thing. And they apply the usual things that they might do for some kind of business problem. And the thing about trading is we're not wired to trade. I mean, some of the things you need to do in trading are so against how we're naturally wired. There's all these biases, which I'm sure you and Walter talk about in your podcast. And, you know, it's all counterintuitive. And so these successful people who come along and do the usual things, find it doesn't work, and they get frustrated and they can't understand it. And then, of course, the emotions kick in, and then they, you know, and as you say, ultimately, there's some, it's usually really deep stuff. I mean, I'm routinely finding stuff under the age of 5 that I'm having to sort out in respecting my trading now. Here I am in my 50s, you know. This is crazy stuff.
Same here. But how did you kind of, what did you start off with in the therapy space? Where did you get started with that?
Right.
I mean,
well, as I said,
therapy, right?
I was a hypnotherapist back in the day. And at the time, this seemed like a really great tool because you can program yourself up to think in certain ways and do things. And you could also do, well, there's hypnosis, which is just making suggestions. And then there's hypnotherapy, which is actually, going back and sorting out past traumas. Mm-hmm. But I found it, I was never quite getting the results I felt I ought to be getting with it. And it's so, you have to spend 20 minutes getting them into bloody hypnosis in the first place and before you can actually start doing any work. Yeah. And it was all just really, quite difficult. And then so there was a long hiatus when I sort of stopped doing the hypnotherapy and didn't really do much until I had this, as I said, this sort of mini breakdown. And then I discovered EFT, which still stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And this tapping thing, which is becoming quite mainstream now. So for people who are actually watching the video, it's you sort of tap and say, even though I have this anxiety, I deeply and completely love and accept myself, and so on like that. And you tap, you do all this kind of stuff. And it looks like nonsense, except it really works. And, and it works to the point where it's basically, I say to people I'm teaching it to, that it's guaranteed to work. And if it's not working, then it's because it's telling you something that you're not quite tapping on the right thing. Or there's some more hidden layer or something like that. But it just clears things like, it's quite remarkable. And I still use this, especially when I'm working with people who have difficult traumas, where there are more subtle techniques. There's something called optimal EFT, which is perhaps a more spiritually based thing, but it's no tapping version of EFT. And the guy who created EFT in the first place is called Gary Craig. He then went on to do this optimal EFT. But it's more subtle, and for people who are quite severely traumatized, it's quite difficult to get them to hold that mental space. Whereas the tapping, however traumatized you are, you can still tap, and which is why it's a really good tool. And there's nothing wrong with tapping as a tool. It will sort out any issue that you have.
And some people might think that this is kind of weird. So maybe I can back up. So what you're basically doing is you're tapping on these acupuncture points, right?
That's right.
Yes. Known for thousands of years in China or whatever, all over the world, and you're just using that to essentially short circuit the thought that's going through your head, basically, right?
Yes, I think the idea. I mean, the truth is, it doesn't matter why it works; it's just the fact that it works. Sure. But the idea is somehow these traumas. I mean, it's reasonably well known now that traumas are stored in your body somewhere. Because you can do various sort of kind of body healing things which release emotional traumas. So that. Trapped in your body somewhere, and then by tapping on these energy meridians, as you correctly described them, and whilst at the same time holding in mind the issue that you have. So, like this anxiety, you tap while you're saying this anxiety, this anxiety, this anxiety, and that will basically release that trauma from wherever it is in your body. And through trial and error, this guy Gary Craig came up with a system which is going to cover all the bases, so he's will winkle out the problems wherever they happen to be. And that it's not quite as simple as just blindly tapping on the symptom that you have. Ideally, you need to start looking at the underlying cause, the underlying original trauma, and break that down to its smallest components. That way you're guaranteed to sort it out. If you're tapping on the symptom, like I said, anxiety as an example, then the question is, where does the anxiety come from? See, because there'll be an underlying trauma or multiple traumas where you had anxiety and you didn't deal with them correctly at the time, and so that's got trapped within your system. But if you just tap on anxiety, it's quite a blunt tool. The metaphor that Gary Craig likes to use is if you're trying to break up a table, tapping on the symptoms, like trying to hit the table top to try and break it, hitting it with your hand to try and break it up. Whereas if you find the underlying trauma, it's like breaking up the table leg. You only have to get 2 or 3 of them and the table collapses. So it's not as simple as blindly tapping on whatever the presenting symptom is. There is more of an art to it, but once you grasp that, it's really an amazing tool for sorting out all these issues.
Oh yeah, totally. I've seen that in action, and I know that's for sure. But do you think that the person needs to know exactly what the issue is, or can they just kind of do something that will help them release any type of trauma in their body?
Well, the way I normally work with clients is that I'm trying to get them to go back to the time when they felt, they did a trade and they did the wrong thing, or, and they made a mistake. And I say, well, what did you feel at the time? Because that's always the starting point. What do you actually feel at the time? So you have to start there. So, maybe it was stress or anxiety. And then I get them to say, okay, think about that feeling, go into it. Where does it remind you of? How old do you feel? And that kind of thing. Is there a time when you can remember feeling like this in the past? And it's, maybe you can start homing in on it then. But if you don't know, then you can basically start tapping on the feeling itself, such as the anxiety. And hopefully that will bring up, you start to get insights as, you suddenly get a memory or pop into your head of a time when you were 6 or whatever. And, you felt very anxious or something, first day at school or whatever it might be, and so that's but you feel in this, if you don't know what the underlying cause is, then that anxiety is the way in, and then hopefully it starts to open up. So I hope that answers.
No, totally.
Yeah.
I've seen it both ways, where you actually try to pinpoint it. I think pinpointing it is probably more effective, but if you do like a shotgun at it and kind of like shoot that general area and the feeling, I think that can also work too,
I mean,
right?
you do get relief just from as you say, shotgunning the symptom rather rather than the underlying cause. But if you want to get, make sure you completely eradicate it, you need to clear out, eventually you'll need to clear out the original underlying trauma. And that's how you get, proper lasting results. Because otherwise, the thing about anxiety, there may be half a dozen different traumas which are all contributing to it, and the way these things tend to work is once you've got some in your system, then that'll tend to feed into future events. It'll push, it'll be a button to be pushed, and then that will put more anxiety into your system as you're going forward. So what will happen with your trading is, you'll get anxious because of this past trauma. So then you'll be anxious while you trade, and then you'll come to associate trading with being anxious. So then, even when you just think about trading, you suddenly start getting anxious, and it becomes almost like a phobic response. And these things still feed on themselves if you're not careful. So
I think people should really understand how deeply these things can run. Like, you think that was like a minor thing in your childhood, or that event was very minor, but it affected you very deeply. And once you get that habit ingrained into your brain, it's really hard to get out of that rut, right?
No, these things snowball, unfortunately. So what could be a relatively minor thing, because especially you explore some of these things and, you get back to someone's childhood and it's not a big deal. It's very much a small T trauma. But it was a big deal for them at the time. And quite often what happens with these traumas, and one of the crucial things about it is you lock in a limiting belief. So, like a child may be disappointed at something that happens, right? And they may have the limiting belief that I never get what I want. As a 4-year-old, for example, that's the kind of sort of maybe not very logical conclusion that a child might make. But the thing is, that gets locked into your system, right? And ever afterwards, you think on some level that you never get what you want. So when it comes to trading, you never get what you want. So you're never going to succeed until you eradicate that belief, and unfortunately, we live most of our lives under the cloud of these limiting beliefs that we carry around with us, and we have no idea about them until we start to look.
Yeah. Like Ed Seykota said, right? Everybody gets what they want out of trading, even if it's losing.
Exactly. I thought that was the most profound of the Market Wizards chapters, and that one statement, and if you can truly grasp that, then that you're well on the way to mastering trading psychology.
Totally. Okay, so you went through some EFT. Have you gone any further from that, or?
Yes. Well, as part of sorting myself out, so I was exploring any and everything, but particularly the EFT and as I said, the optimal EFT. As part of that, so optimal EFT is much more spiritually inclined. And I did start to explore some of those kind of things. And, a part of the work that I do now is actually much more spiritually based for people who are interested in pursuing a spiritual path. So that I don't tend to do so much of that with mainstream traders, but it is something that I'm, passionate about and, explore deeply. I'm just thinking about other techniques. Another great one is Ho'oponopono. I don't know if you come across that.
Yeah.
That's for listeners who don't know, it's a really simple but amazingly powerful technique. The basic idea is that on some level, we are responsible for everything that happens to us in our lives. So if, the what happens in our life is a reflection back to us of what we believe inside us. So at that level, we're responsible for everything that happens. So whatever's going on in your life, whether it's something that's, obviously you're to do directly related to you, or superficially nothing to do with you, you can do this. It's basically 4 little steps, and you basically, whatever it is, you say, I'm sorry for causing X. Please forgive me. Then I love you. Now that I love you is directed at the problem X itself. So you're actually embracing and loving the problem. And then thank you. And you're thanking the universe for healing this, getting rid of this thing for you. So it all sounds very, airy fairy and spiritual and new agey and things like that. But it really does work. I mean, you don't even have to believe in it and it will still work. So, that's another really simple technique for clearing all sorts of stuff. So you could just say, this anxiety I have about putting a trade on, I'm sorry for causing this anxiety about putting a trade on. Please forgive me. I love you. That's the anxiety. I love this anxiety. Thank you, universe, for healing this anxiety. And just say that over and over again. And you'll notice the feeling of anxiety will go down as you say it. Each time, each round you do, it'll get less and less. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, for people who don't know, that comes from the Hawaiian culture, and
it does. Yes,
I believe I read a story about a Hawaiian chief or a shaman or something who healed an entire mental ward at the hospital, and he basically closed it down. Right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, right. there's proof, verifiable proof that it does work.
Yeah.
So
he not only did he heal entire mental hospital, right? He didn't even go to the hospital. He just had the list of all the patients, and he just worked on each one at a time. And because the idea was at some level that patient had come into his life, and so therefore he was at some level responsible for those person's issues. And he just looked at the client list, worked on each one, and he cured the entire ward. It's just mind-blowing stuff.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's a great one. Anything else that you found particularly useful?
Let's have a think. So the main ones I use are EFT, OEFT, and some Ho'oponopono. I've got into some, on the spiritual side of things, there's a whole bunch of spiritual healing stuff that I now do as well. But, that's probably beyond the scope of the trading kind of thing. I mean, I would say that basically something as simple as EFT is all you need, because it's simple to learn. You can learn it in a few minutes. And if you want to know more details, the whole course as created by Gary Craig is there for free on the internet. And, you can do anything you want. You can heal anything with it. The only thing I'd say you couldn't do is really severe PTSD type trauma where you need someone to hold the space for you. And, you can't do that yourself. But, really for your everyday traumas.
Yeah.
EFT is, for, we can pretty much do everything you're looking for.
Great. Yeah, I mean, that's the best part, right? It's like you can do it for free. You can do it on yourself, basically. And
exactly, yeah.
So there's no reason not to try it out.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure your listeners are all very much on board with the idea of it's all about your trading psychology ultimately. And this is, I would say, is a vital tool in your trading psychology toolbox.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree, and it goes much deeper than the stuff you read on the internet about most trading psychology tips and stuff like that.
Yes. I mean, a lot of trading psychology seems to be about, coming up with rules and systems to try and minimize the damage, the damage that your subconscious is going to do to your trading. So it's not solving the problem. It's just trying to contain the problem. Whereas for me, I want to, come up with quite a good approach, for example, is to say, okay, my goal here is not to make money. My goal is to follow my rules. And if at the end of the trading session, I follow my rules, I've done well. And that's a really good technique to use if people are struggling. But, it's still not looking at why aren't you following the rules? And if you sort out the reason why you feel the need to break your rules, why you suddenly feel the need to revenge trade or put on a trade that's not part of your rules and things, become impulsive. If you sort that out, then you won't need that anymore because the problem's gone. It's that sort of level. And some of the really fundamental stuff about what you actually believe you deserve or how much money you think you allow yourself to have, that kind of stuff, which fundamentally affects our trading outcomes. You can't really come up with rules to affect that, because that's about your inner beliefs. So you have to get your hands dirty at that point and go into your psyche and work it out.
yeah. No, that's a great point. I think that's the rules try to mitigate what you're doing and try to put you in a box, like you said, but ultimately it's like more about figuring out who you are, what your roadblocks are, and how to have a system that works with your personality and not against it, right?
Yeah. I particularly like what you said. I've read your bio for the podcast. I like the bit that where you say that you actually use trading as a means for inner exploration and self-development. I mean, that's how I feel about it as well, in that, for many people, it's about trading psychology as a tool to improve their trading profits. For me, it's about trading as a means to improve myself. And in passing, I make more money each time I work on myself. It's a tool for self-exploration, as you say. It's if you flip on its head like that.
Ultimately, that makes it more interesting in the long run. If you're just trying to make money, then I think it can get kind of boring. But
yes,
I think if you look at it in that respect, it's a lot more interesting.
Yeah. There's always there's always another layer to peel back.
Yeah. And the next layer is more impressive and awe-inspiring, I guess, than the last layer. So
yeah.
Okay, great. Anything else you want to add? Any big successes you've had you want to talk about or anything like that?
Just this stuff works. My clients get great results, and the thing is, many people, or maybe people talk about trading, or I talk about trading therapy as a thing. Some people, particularly depends on which country you're in. I think in America, people are very happy about going to a therapist and being open about it, whereas here in the UK, where I am, people are it's still a bit, I think, oh, something wrong with you if you need to go to a therapist. Well, that's why you're going. But the thing about it's every single person picks up these traumas throughout their life, and they don't have to be big traumas. There can be small stuff. The trauma is not what happens to you; it's your emotional response to what happens to you. That is the trauma. And so it doesn't have to be big T trauma. It doesn't have to be major abuse or anything like that. It just could, it just be being unhappy as a child, being bullied at school, parents not being very loving towards you, all that kind of stuff, and that all shapes our lives. And, we carry around these emotional burdens and these limiting beliefs our whole life. And it's so freeing to be able to put that stuff down. It's just so liberating, and I do say to anyone who will listen that, whether it's to do with trading or just life, the single best thing you can do for yourself is to sort this shit out. Because once you do that, your benefit lasts the rest of your life. I mean, that's the thing. It lasts the rest of your life, and you will always be a better person and have a better life for sorting this stuff out. So, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well,
and the thing is in passing, it improves your trading.
Yeah. But maybe we could talk about the hard part a little bit there. Like, some people might know the benefits, but it can be hard to face this stuff, right? And how do you help people through that?
Well, yes. I mean, that's a good point, because the whole reason why we need therapists in the first place is because these unpleasant feelings are unpleasant. They feel horrible, right? And that is why we don't face them. We don't own them. We sort of shove them down and try and run away from them, right? And the great irony in any kind of therapeutic work is the more you run away from something in terms of a feeling, the more it comes after you and gets bigger. And the only way to sort it out ultimately is to face and accept your feelings. And as soon as you accept a feeling, a really horrible feeling, that's when it goes away. I mean, because basically feelings are like they're messages from your subconscious to your conscious telling you that something's not right here. Unless it's a good feeling, of course, but if it's an unpleasant feeling, anxiety or something like that, it's saying, look, there's something I'm not happy with here. Your subconscious is saying this, right? And it's sending a message. And if you acknowledge that, and say, okay, message received, I'll think about that and try and do something about it, then that's fine. But if you don't accept the feeling, then it says, oh, I'm not being listened to. And then it sort of sends it louder and it keeps on going. And, and it also then gets locked into your system, and that becomes a button that can be pushed by and triggered by other situations. So you're right. It's because the feelings are so horrible, we run away from them. But once you start to learn that they're actually not that bad when you turn around and face them, then that changes everything, and that unlocks the door, and you can start unraveling all the layers, and it's how you get the freedom.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a lot of people, like you said, might think that going to a therapist is weak or whatever, but it's actually the hardest and the strongest thing you can do for yourself. So
it's the opposite of weak. Yes, I mean, the weak people refuse to face these things and run away from them. It's the strong people who will turn and face those. Like in spirituality, they talk about shadow work, but you face the dark side of you. There's all these feelings, and the thing about you realize is that it's all the same in the end. It's all down to, fear, anger, guilt, sadness, shame. They're all feelings. Whatever the circumstances that created the feeling is just, irrelevant, really. It's just the feeling in the end. We all have them. They're all the same. And once you accept them and face them and deal with them, they go away. And then you're free, and that's basically, once you realize that, you can change your life.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but it can be as simple as that for sure. All right. Well, I appreciate the talk, Adam. This has been fascinating. And where can people find out more about you?
Well, if they go to my website at snapdragonsystems.com, then that's where I've got my programming work there as well. But there's this whole section on trading psychology, and then they can message me there or email me, and we can have a chat. What I generally say is have a free initial consultation, because I want to check the two of us are happy to work together, because not everyone clicks, and I want to find out what people are after and things like that. So free initial consultation, and then if they're interested, we can work together.
And this is all done over Zoom, right?
I do it all over Zoom because I have clients all over the world. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Adam. It was great speaking with you.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Hugh.